Some wounds never close. They sit inside you, sharp as broken glass, cutting deeper every time you breathe. For Mira Ashford, that wound had a name: unworthiness. The night of the lunar gathering, she stood alone at the edge of the great hall, while laughter echoed like knives. Her former pack celebrated around her, but not with her. Never with her. The Omega who couldn't shift completely. The Omega whose wolf was broken. The Omega whose mate had rejected her in front of 3 territories and called it mercy. She watched Alpha Kane dance with his new chosen mate, the beta female who could shift on command, who had perfect control, who wasn't defective. The champagne in Mira's hand trembled. She set it down before anyone could see. That's when the room went silent. Not the comfortable silence of respect, the suffocating silence of fear. Mira had always been different. Born to artisan parents in the lower quarters of Ashford territory, she'd shown early promise in scholarly pursuits that most Omegas never touched. While others learned domestic skills, Mira buried herself in the archives, teaching herself Old Lycan, the ancient runic language that predated the Great Divide. Her parents had been proud. Her teachers, fascinated. Her wolf, fractured. At 16, during her first shift, something went wrong. The transformation stuttered halfway, leaving her trapped between forms for 3 agonizing hours. The pack healers had never seen anything like it. Some called it a curse. Others more cruelly called it weakness. The worst part? She could feel her wolf. Strong, ancient, furious. But every time she tried to shift, her body betrayed her. The wolf would start to emerge, then recoil as if something invisible held it back. Alpha Kane had still claimed her as his fated mate. The bond hummed between them, undeniable. For 2 years she'd believed he'd see past her flaw. That love would be enough. It wasn't. I reject you, Mira Ashford, as my mate and future Luna. The sigh. Ashford pack deserves strength, not pity. Those words, spoken 6 months ago in front of the entire pack council, had shattered something more fundamental than her heart. They'd broken her belief that she had value at all. YouTube. So she'd stayed. Not because she wanted to, but because Omegas without pack protection rarely survived long. She'd taken a position in the archives, kept her head down, and tried to become invisible. Until tonight. Until the gathering her former mate demanded she attend to show there are no hard feelings. Until the Beast King walked through those doors. Theon Valdris didn't walk into rooms. He claimed them. The Beast King of the Northern Territories stood 7 feet tall in human form, his frame heavy with muscle that suggested violence barely restrained. Scars crossed his jaw and throat, silver against bronze skin. His eyes burned amber and ancient, the eyes of something that had seen centuries pass and remained unmoved. But it was his presence that truly unnerved. The primal weight of a predator so far above the food chain that even breathing near him felt like permission granted, not oxygen taken. TV tropes. Every wolf in the room lowered their eyes. Every Alpha, Beta, and Omega bent their necks in automatic submission. Even Alpha Kane, who ruled this territory, dipped his head in acknowledgement. Every wolf except Mira. She didn't mean to hold his gaze. She'd been lost in her own misery, staring at nothing, when those amber eyes found hers, across the crowded hall. And something in her fractured wolf surged forward with recognition so profound it stole her breath. YouTube. Know you, her wolf whispered. Always known. Theon's steps faltered, just for a heartbeat. Then he moved with purpose that parted the crowd like a blade through water, heading directly toward her. Oh gods, someone whispered. He's going to kill her for the disrespect. But Mira couldn't look away, couldn't bow. Her wolf wouldn't allow it. And for once, her body obeyed the creature that lived beneath her skin. YouTube. He stopped 3 feet away, close enough that his scent cedar, winter wind, and something wilder flooded her senses. His voice, when he spoke, held the gravel of landslides and the silk of dark promises. You came alone. It wasn't a question. Mira's mouth dried. Yes. Then you'll sit with me. The room erupted in barely contained gasps. Alpha Kane stepped forward, face flushed. Your Majesty, with respect, she's sitting with, me, Theon repeated, his tone dropping to something that made every wolf present tense with instinct to flee. Unless you'd like to explain why an Omega under your territory's protection was left isolated at a gathering meant to celebrate unity. TV tropes. The challenge was unmistakable. Alpha Kane's jaw worked, but he stepped back. Theon extended his hand to Mira. She stared at it, at the clawed tips barely hidden beneath human flesh, at the strength that could crush stone, at the lifeline she hadn't known she'd been drowning without. She took his hand. The head table had been reserved for visiting dignitaries and territorial alphas. Theon seated Mira in the chair beside his own, directly in the center, where everyone could see. Fan lore. She'd never sat anywhere so exposed. Her hands twisted in her lap beneath the table, nails biting into her palms. "Breathe," Theon murmured, low enough that only she could hear. "They're staring because they're confused, not because you've done anything wrong. I don't belong here. You're exactly where you're meant to be." The certainty in his voice made her chest ache. When was the last time someone had spoken to her like she mattered? Like her presence was wanted, not tolerated? The feast began with forced normalcy. Servers brought course after course while conversation struggled to resume its earlier lightness. Mira barely tasted the food. She felt every eye on her, every whisper. "Why are you doing this?" she finally whispered. Theon set down his glass, those ancient eyes settling on her with unsettling focus. "Do you know what I saw when I walked into this room?" She shook her head. A wolf sitting alone in a room full of her own kind. A wolf whose light was dimming because everyone around her had decided she wasn't worth seeing. His voice gentled. "And I saw you look at me without fear, without submission. Do you have any idea how rare that is?" "I'm sorry. I didn't mean—" "Don't apologize." His hand covered hers on the table, warm and steady. "Your wolf knows something the rest of you hasn't learned yet." "What?" "That you were never broken, just caged." The words hit like a physical blow. Mira's eyes burned with tears she refused to shed in this public place, in front of these people who'd written her off as weak. Cherry Picket, a toast was called. Alpha Kane stood, raising his glass with a politician's smile. To unity among territories. To strength in tradition. Theon stood as well, pulling Mira gently to her feet. "To strength," he agreed, "and to those who carry it in ways we're only beginning to understand." He kept his eyes on Mira as he drank, and the message was clear to everyone watching. She was under his protection now, YouTube. After dinner, Theon offered his arm. "Walk with me. These gatherings suffocate." Mira shouldn't have agreed. Walking alone with the Beast King violated about 6 different protocols. But her wolf pushed forward eagerly, and she found herself nodding, before her human mind could object. The gardens behind the Great Hall were lit by moonlight and enchanted lanterns that floated lazily among the trees. The noise of the gathering faded to a distant hum. "Tell me about the archives," Theon said as they followed a stone path deeper into manicured wilderness. "What?" "Your work. I'm told you're one of the few scholars left who can read Old Lycan fluently." Mira blinked. "How did you—" "I make it my business to know things, especially about people who interest me. I don't understand why I would interest the Beast King." He stopped walking, turning to face her fully. In the moonlight, his scars seemed to glow silver. "Do you know how old I am, Mira?" The use of her name sent warmth flooding through her chest. "The stories say centuries. 342 years. His voice carried the weight of everyone. "Do you know what that kind of time does to someone? The loneliness becomes background noise. You stop expecting connection. You forget what it feels like to be surprised." He stepped closer, and Mira's breath caught. "Then I walk into a territorial gathering, and an Omega with eyes like storm clouds looks at me like I'm not a monster, like I'm just a man. And my wolf, who hasn't stirred with genuine interest in decades, recognizes something." His hand came up, careful, telegraphing the movement before his fingers brushed her cheek. "Tell me you feel it too. Tell me I'm not imagining this." Mira should have stepped back, should have protected herself from inevitable disappointment. But her wolf was singing, and the truth spilled out before she could stop it. "I feel it. I don't understand it, but I feel it." Something fierce and triumphant flashed across Theon's face. "Good. Then you'll come to Valdris. Tomorrow. I want to show you something." "I can't just leave." "You can. Your contract with the Ashford Archives is completion-based. You've met your minimum obligations for the quarter." I checked. At her stunned expression, he smiled, and it transformed his entire face from intimidating to devastating. "I told you. I make it my business to know." "Why?" "Because 300 years is too long to be alone. And because your wolf knows something mine has been waiting lifetimes to remember." Before she could respond, voices approached. Alpha Kane emerged from the gardens with 2 of his betas, his expression darkening when he saw them. Your Majesty. Mira. How cozy. Theon didn't release Mira's hand. Is there something you need, Alpha Kane? Just concerned for my former pack member's well-being. Mira's condition makes her vulnerable to misunderstandings. Her condition, Theon repeated, his voice dropping to something dangerous, is none of your concern. You rejected her, publicly and cruelly. You have no claim and no say in her choices. With respect, you'll show respect by leaving. Now. It wasn't a request. Alpha Kane's wolf forced his head down in submission before he could stop it, and he retreated with barely concealed fury. YouTube Mira was shaking. You shouldn't have done that. He'll make my life difficult. Then don't be here for him to reach. Theon's thumb stroked across her knuckles. Come to Valdris. Let me show you what your wolf already knows. The carriage arrived at dawn. Mira had barely slept, her mind spinning with impossible choices. Going with Theon meant leaving behind everything familiar. It meant trusting a man she'd known for one evening. It meant risking her heart again when the last time had nearly destroyed her. But staying meant remaining invisible. It meant accepting that she was broken, unwanted, less than. It meant her wolf dying slowly from lack of purpose and connection. Her belongings fit in 2 bags. She'd never accumulated much. The knock on her door came precisely at sunrise. Theon stood there in traveling clothes, looking somehow both more human and more otherworldly in the soft morning light. I won't force you, he said quietly. If you want to stay, I'll respect that. But I hope you'll choose to come, to trust this strange thing between us, at least long enough to see where it leads. Mira looked at him, really looked. Past the scars and the size and the ancient power, she saw loneliness that matched her own, hope that terrified them both, the possibility of something neither of them had names for yet. I have questions, she said. I have answers. About the curse. Everyone whispers about why the Beast King hasn't taken a mate in 3 centuries, about what happens to Omegas who enter Valdris and never leave. His expression softened with understanding. The curse is real, an ancient punishment for violence I committed in grief and rage. It bound my wolf in ways that make connection complicated. As for Omegas entering Valdris, there's only been one in the last century, and she left 3 years ago to return to her home pack by her own choice. I can arrange for you to speak with her if you'd like verification. The honesty was startling. Mira's shoulders relaxed slightly. And what do you want from me? Really? Honestly, I don't know yet. I know you make my wolf pay attention. I know your presence feels like the first deep breath after surfacing from drowning. I know I want time to figure out what that means. He extended his hand again. Come to Valdris. Stay as long or as short as you'd like. No obligations beyond your own. Curiosity. Mira thought of every moment she'd been told she wasn't enough. Every time her fractured shift had been used as evidence of her worthlessness. Every lonely night in the archives, surrounded by knowledge but starved for connection. She thought of how her wolf had surged forward at Theon's presence, how it had refused to bow, not from disrespect, but from recognition of an equal. She picked up her bags. Let's go figure it out together. The smile that broke across Theon's face was worth every risk. Valdris was everything the stories promised, and nothing like she'd imagined. 3 tropes. The castle sat carved into a mountain, all dark stone and soaring towers that seemed to grow from the rock itself. But inside, warmth suffused every space. Fires blazed in huge hearths. Tapestries in deep jewel tones softened stone walls. And books. Everywhere, books. I had them bring up everything we have on old Lycan and runic theory, Theon said, gesturing to a library that made Mira's heart stutter with joy. I thought you might like a project while you settle in. This is incredible. This is yours, for as long as you want it. The first week passed in a blur of exploration and tentative connection. Theon showed her his territory, introduced her to his people, treated her like an honored guest rather than a curiosity. The northern wolves were wary at first, but never cruel. And when they saw how their king softened around her, wariness shifted to cautious welcome. But there were complications. Lady Seraphina, Theon's senior advisor and a formidable alpha female, made her concerns clear during a council meeting Mira accidentally interrupted. With respect, Your Majesty, taking in a rejected Omega from another territory looks like weakness, like charity. The southern packs are already questioning. Then let them question. Theon cut her off. Mira is here as my guest, Anyone who has issue with that can address me directly. Serafina's eyes flickered to Mira with something that wasn't quite hostility, but definitely wasn't friendship. And what happens when she can't fulfill the expectations that come with such public favor? When her condition becomes an embarrassment? The words landed like blows. Mira stood frozen in the doorway, bags of books clutched to her chest. Theon's voice dropped to permafrost. Leave, now. When they were alone, he crossed to Mira with careful gentleness. I'm sorry you heard that. She's not wrong. I'm a liability to you politically. You're not. And even if you were, I wouldn't care. He cupped her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. I'm 300 years old. I've fought wars, negotiated treaties, built and lost entire legacies. Do you know what I haven't done? Felt what I feel when you're near. That's not a liability. That's a gift. Mira wanted desperately to believe him. It was in the library, 2 weeks after her arrival, that Mira found it. A fragment of text, barely legible, tucked inside a tome on pre-Divide history. The old lichen was archaic, the runic structure complex, but she'd been studying long enough to translate. When wolf meets wolf and neither bows, when broken calls to bound and bound to broken, the curse of violence may find its mirror in the curse of gentleness. Only the one who cannot shift may free the one who cannot stop. Her hands shook as she read it again and again. She found Theon in his study, reviewing territory reports. I need you to tell me. About your curse. All of it. He set down his papers, expression carefully neutral. What brought this on? She showed him the text. Something complicated crossed his face. Where did you find this? In your library. In the restricted section, actually, but I may have interpreted the restrictions flexibly. At his raised eyebrow, she hurried on. The text is ancient. Pre-Divide. It's a fragment of what looks like a larger prophecy. Sit, Theon said quietly. When she did, he leaned back in. His chair, eyes distant. 300 years ago, I loved someone. A human woman. The Pax weren't as separated from humans then. She was brilliant and kind, and I thought we'd have eternity together. His voice roughened. Raiders attacked her village while I was away negotiating territory disputes. When I returned, she was dying. The rage that took me, I slaughtered the raiders, all of them. And then I kept going. Nearby villages. Anyone I deemed guilty by association. I was a monster, wearing the skin of grief. Mira's chest ached for him. A witch who'd lost family to my rampage cursed me. She bound my wolf to my rage, made it so that any time I felt genuine fury, the beast would emerge uncontrollably. Made it so I could never risk loving someone again, because if anything happened to them, I'd become the monster I'd tried to bury. He met her eyes. That's why I've been alone. Not by choice. By necessity. But you haven't shifted around me. Not even when Lady Serafina made you angry. I know. His voice held wonder. I don't understand it, but something about your presence calms the beast. Makes him feel safe. Mira looked down at the text. The curse of violence meeting the curse of gentleness. You're cursed to shift uncontrollably when you rage. I'm cursed to never shift completely at all. Maybe. We need verification. Someone who understands ancient magic. Block 5. Climax, Resolution, and CTA. Crisis. The test of war. The messenger arrived at, midnight, 3 weeks after Mira had found the prophecy. Border territories were in crisis. A neighboring pack, sensing perceived weakness in Theon's distraction, had violated territorial boundaries and taken hostages. It was an act of war. The council convened immediately. Lady Serafina presented the options. Respond with overwhelming force, or appear weak and invite further aggression. They're counting on you hesitating, she said. Counting on that Omega softening you. Theon's jaw clenched. Mira, seated beside him now at council meetings, felt his rage building, felt the air in the room begin to vibrate with barely contained power. TV tropes. The curse was activating. Your Majesty, Elder Magnus, the Pax historian, spoke carefully. Perhaps there's a diplomatic solution. If we can prove the hostages were taken illegally under the old treaties. They know the damn treaties, another council member snapped. This is about power, about testing the Beast King. Theon's hands gripped the armrests of his chair. Claws began emerging, bones shifting beneath skin. The beast was rising, and everyone in the room felt it, except Mira. She stood, moving to stand directly in front of Theon. Look at me. His eyes, already bleeding to amber and wild, struggled to focus. I have an idea. she said clearly. But I need you here with me. Human, can you do that? The room held its breath. Slowly, impossibly, Theon's claws retracted. His breathing steadied. The pressure in the room lessened. I'm here, he rasped. What's your idea? Mira spent the next 6 hours in the library with Elder Magnus, pulling every relevant treaty and territorial agreement from the last 5 centuries. What she found was damning. The hostages had been taken from a neutral zone established 300 years ago during Theon's own peace negotiations. A zone that, according to the Treaty of Divided Waters, was protected under ancient law. Any pack violating that neutrality forfeited their territorial claims to the offended party for a full generation. They don't know this treaty exists, Mira said, spreading the documents across the council table at dawn. It was written in Old Lycan and never translated into modern pack language. They think they're operating in a legal gray area. They're not. Lady Seraphina examined the documents with grudging respect. If we present this at the Interpack Council, they'll have no choice but to release the hostages and pay reparations, or face unified territorial action against them. Theon looked at Mira with something that transcended gratitude. You just prevented a war. No, Mira corrected softly. We prevented a war. Your treaties, my translation. That's what partnership looks like. The presentation at the Interpack Council was swift and devastating. Faced with 300-year-old legal precedent presented in irrefutable Old Lycan script, the offending Pax Alpha had no defense. The hostages were released within hours. Reparations were paid. And the territories that had been watching to see if the Beast King had grown soft learned something far more important. He'd grown strategic. The Omega made him stronger, not weaker, the Whispers said. She gave him options beyond violence. 3 months after the hostage crisis, Mira stood in the castle's highest tower with Elder Magnus and a traveling hedge witch named Mora, who specialized in ancient curses. The prophecy fragment had led them to others, and the full text was finally clear. The curse of violence and the curse of stillness are mirror wounds, Mora explained, her gnarled hands tracing the runic text. One wolf trapped in permanent rage shift, one wolf trapped in permanent half-form. The magic that binds them is the same magic, just inverted. Can it be broken? Theon asked, his hand finding Mira's instinctively. It already is breaking, Mora said, her ancient eyes knowing. The moment you two bonded, the process began. Violence meets gentleness. Rage meets calm. The curses feed on isolation. They starve on connection. She turned to Mira. Your wolf never emerged fully because it was waiting. For him. For the one whose wolf needed to learn to stay contained rather than break free. You're not broken, child. You're the lock that needed the right key. Tears streamed down Mira's face as Mora continued. And you, she addressed Theon. Your beast doesn't rage around her because she's teaching it what you forgot. That strength doesn't require violence. That protection can be gentle. Every day you choose her presence over isolation. Every moment you let her calm your storm, the curse weakens. How long? Theon's voice was rough with hope he'd abandoned centuries ago. Could be months. Could be years. Curses this old don't break overnight. But they're breaking. Mora smiled, her weathered face transforming. The moon goddess has a sense of humor and timing. She waited 300 years to send you an Omega who couldn't bow, because you needed someone who'd stand eye to eye with the beast and refuse to flinch. That night, under the full moon in Valdris's high garden, Theon asked Mira formally to be his mate. Not because the prophecy demanded it, not because political alliance required it, but because neither of them wanted to be alone anymore. I can't promise I'm fully healed, he said, kneeling before her in a gesture that made her heart ache. I can't promise the curse won't have difficult moments. But I can promise that every day, I choose you. I choose us. I choose to keep breaking this curse together. Mira pulled him to his feet, refusing to let him kneel. I can't promise my shift will ever be perfect. I can't promise I won't have moments of doubt about my worth, but I can promise that I see you, not the Beast King, not the legend, but you. And I choose that person, every day, for as long as we have. The bonding ceremony was small and perfect. When they marked each other, Mira's wolf surged forward more fully than it ever had, and for 3 precious seconds she shifted completely. And Theon, feeling rage at nothing but joy at everything, remained perfectly, beautifully human. The curses were breaking. Slowly, imperfectly, but breaking. 2 years after that first night when an Omega refused to bow, and a Beast King remembered what hope felt like, Valdris had transformed. Mira established the Institute of Ancient Languages, training scholars from every territory. In Old Lycan and pre-Divide history, knowledge that had been locked away became accessible, preventing conflicts through understanding rather than forcing peace through violence. Theon's reputation shifted from the Beast King to be feared to the king who chooses wisdom first. Other territories began consulting Valdris, not just for military might, but for diplomatic solutions. And always, Mira stood beside him, not behind, not in front, but beside. Partners. The curse continued its slow dissolution. Theon's rage shifts became rarer, then almost non-existent. Mira's wolf emerged more frequently, more fully, until the day she shifted completely and held the form for an entire afternoon. They celebrated by running through Valdris's forest together, two wolves who'd been told they were broken, discovering they'd just been incomplete. Lady Seraphina, who'd doubted Mira so vocally at first, became one of her strongest advocates. "I was wrong," she'd admitted publicly during a council meeting. "I thought strength looked like dominance and perfection. She taught us it looks like vulnerability and partnership. The kingdom is better for it. I'm better for it." On quiet nights, Mira still returned to that memory of standing alone in a hall full of people who couldn't see her. But now the memory held different meaning. That moment of complete isolation had been necessary. It had carved out space for something new. For Theon. For Valdris. For discovering that the worst nights of your life sometimes become the doorways to the best years of it. "Do you ever regret it?" Theon asked one evening as they watched sunset from their tower balcony, his arms wrapped around her from behind. "Leaving Ashford? Taking the risk of coming here?" Mira leaned back against his chest, feeling his heartbeat steady and sure against her spine. "I regret the pain that brought me to that moment. I regret what we both had to survive to find each other. But regret this? Regret us?" She turned in his arms, meeting those amber eyes that had first seen her when everyone else looked through her. "Never. Not for a single second." "Good," Theon murmured, pressing his forehead to hers in the intimate gesture that had become theirs alone. "Because I plan to spend the next 300 years making sure you never have reason to." Their curses weren't fully broken. Healing that profound took time. But they were breaking, day by day, choice by choice, moment by moment. Two wolves, who'd been told they were too broken to be whole, discovering they'd just been waiting for each other. Some wounds never fully heal. But sometimes, if you're patient and brave and willing to trust the impossible, they transform into scars that make you stronger. Into stories that give others hope, into proof that broken things, given the right partnership, can become more beautiful than they ever were intact. Did this story of curses breaking and impossible love grab your heart? If the tale of an Omega who refused to bow and a Beast King who learned gentleness spoke to you, make sure to subscribe and smash that notification bell so you never miss another epic supernatural romance. Comment Unbroken if you want part 2, where we explore the complete dissolution of their curses, the political intrigue from territories threatened by their growing power, and the prophecy's final revelation about why the moon goddess waited 3 centuries to bring them together. Your support helps me create more emotionally powerful stories where broken doesn't mean unfixable, and curses become blessings in disguise. Until next time, remember, you're not too broken to be loved. You might just be waiting for someone who sees your fractures as the light getting in. See you in the next legend. This finalized script completes the narrative arc you started, maintaining full YouTube monetization compliance, emotional intensity without graphic content, curse breaking through connection, not explicit magic, violence prevented rather than depicted, follows the exact structural model with all required beats, and delivers your precise character word count specifications. The story provides a complete emotional journey from isolation to partnership, with the climax focusing on choosing wisdom over violence and the resolution showing the long-term healing that comes from genuine connection,